I paid rent on his apartment for 3 years, and didn't find out it was his until I was already in my wedding dress. He wasn't even my type. That's the funny part. I remember thinking that when I first saw him at that house party. I was 23, exhausted from finals, holding a red Solo cup like it was the only thing tethering me to the floor, and trying not to spiral over how close graduation was. And there he was, leaning against the counter, not trying to be the center of attention, not shouting over music, just talking, calmly, like the chaos around him didn't touch him, and I don't know what made me pay attention, but I did. He looked kind, not the kind of kind you perform, but the kind you forget to hide, and I kept catching pieces of his voice over the noise, and I remember telling myself to ignore it, that I had enough on my plate, that I wasn't looking for anyone. But then he came over, just like that, and asked if I always looked so skeptical at parties or if he was the problem, and I laughed, couldn't help it, and we stood in the hallway for almost 2 hours talking about everything and nothing, college bullshit, childhood stories, what we thought we'd be doing by now. He was in business school, I was finishing psych. We might have had classes in the same buildings and never noticed, but that night, I noticed, and I didn't stop noticing. After that we just kind of stuck, like it made sense. We didn't even officially start dating for a month, just drifted closer until I was spending more time at his place than mine, and by the time graduation rolled around, we were us. No big speech, no label, just routines that felt like home. And when he asked if I wanted to move in, I didn't even flinch. I was from a smaller town and staying in the city was always my plan, and he already had a lease, a decent 1-bedroom with ugly curtains and good light, and it made sense, so we moved in and split everything down the middle, rent, food, laundry, bills, all 50-50. He called it a partnership, and I liked the way it sounded, like we were building something real, not playing house. We both got entry-level jobs, nothing glamorous, just enough to make ends meet and complain about the subway. We were broke, we were tired, but I was happy, I really was. It felt good to wake up next to someone who made me coffee and remembered how I took it, who rubbed my back when I cried about work and let me have the last slice of pizza even when he wanted it. His family was warm, loud, kind of overwhelming. Mine was smaller and quieter, but they liked him, said he was solid, and I agreed. It wasn't fireworks every night, but it was safe, consistent, something I could breathe in, and I told myself this is it. This is the man I'll build a life with, and I meant it. I meant every damn word. He lost his job on a Thursday, just walked through the door 2 hours early with this look on his face like he'd forgotten how to pretend, and said, "Well, that sucked," then tossed his bag on the couch and grabbed a beer, and I stood there, keys still in my hand, trying to figure out if he was joking. He wasn't. His company had downsized, his position was cut, nothing personal, just business, and I remember saying, "We'll get through it," before I even felt it, because that's what you say when you love someone, even when your stomach drops through the floor. At first it didn't feel real. He slept in a little later, said he was updating his resume, applying online, following leads. I believed him, I wanted to believe him, I needed to, but days turned into weeks, and then months, and the only thing he got better at was leveling up in his stupid games. I'd come home after work and find him still in the same hoodie, headset on, laughing with strangers online while I dropped grocery bags on the counter and tried to not scream. I started covering everything, rent, Wi-Fi, his DoorDash orders, the shared Netflix he used more than me, and told myself this is just temporary, a rough patch, everyone has them. But every time I gently asked how the job search was going, he brushed me off, said it was slow, the market was rough, he was working on a project online. Don't stress, I've got a little passive income, babe, we won't hit zero, and I wanted to ask what the hell that meant. But I was too tired, too drained from keeping everything afloat while he floated. I stopped buying coffee, stopped going out with friends, canceled my dental cleaning just to make the rent stretch far enough, and still, he acted like we were fine, like he was doing something important behind the screen. Once I broke down, said I couldn't keep going like this, and he just pulled me into a hug, whispered, "I've got you, I promise." And I let myself believe it because what else could I do? He finally got hired 3 months later, nothing amazing, but it paid okay, and I wanted to cry with relief. But instead he suggested we go out to celebrate, and he paid for dinner with a smile like he hadn't spent 90 days being a drain, and I said nothing, because I didn't want to ruin the moment, even though part of me wanted to shake him and ask if he even saw what this had cost me. And when we got home, lying on that same couch, he kissed my hand and said, "I think I'm ready to start talking about the wedding," and I froze for a second, like my heart forgot what to do. because for a moment I'd forgotten we were still heading toward that future, that he still saw me as forever, and that was enough to keep me quiet, to make me smile, to make me say yes, even though I hadn't caught my breath in months. We started planning the wedding like people plan a vacation they know they can't afford but hope love will cover the gaps. I wanted something small, simple, just us and a few close people and maybe dinner somewhere that doesn't serve food in plastic baskets. I wanted to save the money and go to Europe. I had this dream of standing in front of the Eiffel Tower with espresso in one hand and his hand in the other, just being there, fully alive, but he said no, said we had to do it right, said it would mean a lot to his parents, that they had a big family, a real community, and they all expected an invitation. I told him I didn't need a crowd to believe in us, but he laughed it off, said, "You'll love it once you see everyone smiling at us," and I started making spreadsheets and compromise lists like a good partner does. We sat down with our families, and when we mentioned splitting costs proportionally, 35 guests from his side, maybe 15 from mine, his mom looked like we'd asked her to fund a funeral, said it should be even, 50-50, that's what real families do, and my parents, bless them, didn't say much but I could feel their discomfort. My dad's face said more than words, and I hated that we were dragging them into this performance. I offered a middle ground. I said we could both contribute from our savings, the ones we'd built together for the trip we were no longer taking, just to make things smoother, and he agreed, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "See, this is why you're the one," and I smiled, but inside something curled up a little smaller, a little colder. We booked the venue, made a Google Doc, picked colors. I smiled through every step, nodded when I wanted to scream, and the night before the wedding I was sitting on the floor in our apartment with my little sister and cousin, drinking rose straight from the bottle, trying not to panic, when my cousin said, "It's wild that you paid rent all this time for a place he owns." And everything in me paused. I asked her what she meant and she said, "Wait, you didn't know?" And then pulled up a Facebook memory from 4 years ago. His mom posting a photo of him holding keys, smiling like he just won the lottery, captioned, "Our baby's first home. Happy 18th. And my mouth went dry. I stared at the photo, at the apartment I knew from every corner, and my sister pulled up more posts, comments, family jokes about his place, how proud they were to get him started, and it hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. This whole time, all 3 years, I'd been paying rent to live in his apartment, thinking we were splitting a lease, thinking we were equals, but I was just another deposit. And during those months when he had no job, when I paid for everything, he didn't say a word, just let me keep swiping my card, calling it partnership, and when he said he had passive income, that was me, it was always me, I was the passive income, and I just sat there, still in my robe, makeup half done, holding a wine bottle with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, and I wanted to scream, to burn something, but all I could do was laugh, this horrible broken laugh, because I'd given up my trip, my dream, my savings, my peace, for a man who let me believe we were building something together while I paid him rent in his own goddamn condo. I still showed up that morning, hair curled, makeup set, dress zipped so tight I couldn't breathe right, but I smiled for the photos, clutched the bouquet like it was a handle keeping me upright, and when I walked down that aisle I wasn't thinking about forever, I was thinking about every rent check I wrote, every lunch I skipped to stretch my budget, every time I rubbed his shoulders while he told me not to worry, because he had us. I looked around at the sea of his family, at the flowers I'd paid half for, at my dad in the second row with his old suit and tired eyes, and I waited until we hit the moment. Does anyone have any reason? And I raised my hand, my voice didn't shake, not once. I said, "Yeah, I do," and the room gasped like a sitcom, and I stepped forward and looked him in the face, the man I was about to give my name and my life to, and said, "For 3 years, I believed we were partners, equals, a team. I paid half the rent on an apartment I thought we shared, but it was yours, wasn't it? Bought by your parents, gifted to you at 18, and you never told me, not once, and when you lost your job, when I carried us? You let me, while you called me your rock, your girl, your everything, and you smiled like you weren't lying to my face every single day." Someone in the crowd whispered, "Oh my God," and I kept going. I said, "You told me you had a passive income, and I believed you, but it was me, I was the passive income, I was the one working double shifts, cutting corners, breaking my back while you sat in your condo and played house." He tried to cut in, stammering, "Babe, I was gonna tell you," and I just lifted the bouquet and slapped it right across his face, flowers cracking, petals flying, his aunt screamed, my cousin clapped, I didn't even blink, just turned and walked, the heels I hated clicking like gunshots on the floor, and I didn't look back, not once. I left that venue in silence, climbed into the Uber in full bridal gear, and told the driver to just drive, anywhere. When I got home I changed into jeans, opened a beer, and sat on the couch in the apartment I'd helped pay for but never truly lived in. His parents didn't call, didn't scold me. Turns out they were horrified, especially his father, a good church man who believed in honesty and hard work, and when the truth came out, when they realized I'd paid their son's bills while he played victim, they took the Europe tickets he'd surprised me with, the ones he bought with my half of our savings, and mailed them to me with a note that said, "You deserve this more than he ever will." So I went. I boarded that flight alone, no ring, no regret, no man beside me, just my passport, my playlist, and a calm in my chest I hadn't felt in months. I landed in Paris the day we were supposed to check in as husband and wife, and instead I sat outside a bakery with a coffee and a croissant, and I smiled, because I didn't need a wedding to feel whole. I didn't need a man to feel chosen. All I needed was this: space, honesty, and a version of myself that finally knew when to walk away. When I met Sean, I wasn't looking for anything. I'd just gotten out of a relationship that felt like being slowly erased. You know the kind, where you shrink to fit, laugh when it's not funny, say, "I'm fine," so much it stops meaning anything. I'd moved into a studio in Koreatown, small but mine, worked my ass off at an agency where no one remembered birthdays and everyone pretended burnout was a badge of honor. I told myself I was fine alone, better off even. I went to work, came home, ordered takeout, watched shows I'd already seen just to avoid silence. And then one night I met him at a friend's game night. He was funny in a quiet way, the kind of guy who didn't have to be loud to hold a room, and when we ended up on the balcony talking about podcasts and frozen Trader Joe's meals, something cracked open in me. He didn't push, didn't flirt too hard, just looked at me like I was someone worth hearing, and God, after everything, that felt revolutionary. We started texting, then calling, then seeing each other on weekends, and soon he was staying over more than not. Toothbrush in my bathroom, charger by my bed. I remember thinking it was the healthiest start I'd ever had. No games, no drama, just this slow-growing ease between us. He listened, remembered small things, held my hand in public like he meant it, and when he told me I made him feel safe, I almost cried. 6 months in, he told me about his condition. We were curled up on the couch, movie paused, his eyes serious in that way that makes you brace for something, and he said he had an autoimmune disorder, nothing life-threatening, but chronic, unpredictable, exhausting. He said he didn't talk about it much because people treated him differently, like he was fragile or lying, and I told him I'd never do that. I promised him I was in. I wanted him, all of him, and I meant it, I really did. I looked up the name of the disease that night, read blogs, made a note to buy low-sodium broth in case of flare-ups. I didn't even blink. I just built a little room in my heart where his pain could live too, because when you love someone, that's what you do, you make space, even when it costs you something. It started with a cough, or maybe it didn't. Maybe that's just what I told myself later when I tried to pinpoint the moment everything shifted. But one morning he didn't get out of bed, said he felt off, low energy, maybe a flare-up, and I said of course, take the day, rest, I'll cover everything. And that was how it began. Just one missed shift, then two, then a week, then he quit, said the stress was making things worse. The schedule was unpredictable, he'd find something remote, flexible, better for his health, and I said okay, of course, your body comes first, I'll pick up the slack for now. I didn't flinch when my half of rent quietly became all of it, when the groceries, the Wi-Fi, the Uber Eats we ordered on his low-energy days all started hitting my card. I took on freelance work at night, skipped my usual weekend coffees, stopped going to bar classes, told myself it was temporary. Love is about support. I even bought him supplements from Instagram ads, hand-mixed herbal teas, rearranged my schedule so I could come home early and check on him. But he mostly wanted to be left alone, said he was tired, sensitive to light. I'd walk in and find him curled up on the couch, headphones in, Xbox controller nearby, and I'd feel that tug of guilt for even thinking what I was thinking, that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't trying that hard. He said the games helped him distract from the pain, that they gave him connection when he was too tired to go out. I said okay. I just want you to feel better. I meant it, even when I was exhausted and eating crackers for dinner and putting off dentist appointments, even when I turned down the Chicago offer, a promotion, a whole new team, because I couldn't leave him here alone without a support system. He He said he didn't want to be a burden, and I held his hand and told him he wasn't. Even though my chest felt like it was collapsing in on itself from the weight of being both of us all the time, we didn't talk about the future anymore, just the now, just the next bill, the next week, the next flare-up, and I told myself this is what devotion looks like, this is what commitment means. But at night I started crying in the shower so he wouldn't hear, and I'd look at myself in the mirror after and wonder how I got so small. I don't know what exactly tipped it. Maybe it was the way he flinched when I mentioned his last doctor's name, or the way his prescription bottles never seemed to change, just sat there in the medicine cabinet like props. But one afternoon while he was at his friend's place I got curious, the kind of curious you don't admit to yourself until you're already 3 clicks deep. I checked the bottle, typed the name into Google, and it came up as a basic multivitamin, nothing prescription, nothing specialized, nothing even close to what he described. My stomach dropped, but I told myself maybe he swapped the pills into a different bottle. People do that, right? I opened the drawer with his insurance cards, looked up the provider, called the number, gave them his info pretending I was helping him prep for a new appointment, and the woman on the line told me gently, firmly, that he hadn't had a claim in over 2 years. Not for therapy, not for specialists, nothing. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there in the kitchen with the faucet dripping and a hole opening in the floor under me. I texted him, casually, asked how the appointment had gone. He said fine, nothing new, just routine stuff, and something in me cracked. I spent that night scrolling forums, Reddit, anything to find some kind of answer, some version of his condition that didn't require visits or medication or, I don't know, proof. And that's when I found it. A thread from 2020, a woman talking about her ex who faked a chronic illness to avoid work, said he was too overwhelmed for life, lived off her for 2 years while spinning a sob story. And as I read her words I felt a cold, electric horror because they were mine, every sentence, every excuse, every pattern. It was like someone had filmed my relationship and posted the script. Her ex's name wasn't Sean, but it didn't need to be. The blueprint was identical. I stayed up all night rereading the thread, my hands shaking, my jaw tight, and by sunrise I knew I'd built my life around a lie, wrapped it in care and patience and soft blankets, and he'd let me, worse, he counted on me to never question it. I didn't leave right away. I wish I could say I packed my bags that night and slammed the door behind me, but the truth is I waited, I planned, I let the rage settle into something colder, something sharper. I opened a new bank account, rerouted my paycheck, canceled the joint grocery app. I started sleeping with a duffel bag under the bed and a backup charger in my car. And then I did the thing I never thought I'd do. I called his sister. She was kind, always had been, and I asked her, softly, "Did Sean ever mention his diagnosis to you?" And there was silence. Then a soft, "What diagnosis?" And just like that, whatever hope I'd been holding cracked clean in half. I spent 2 more weeks collecting evidence. Screenshots, emails, the Reddit thread, even a note I found in our junk drawer that was clearly meant for a past girl. He just scratched out her name and reused it. And then I told him we were having a dinner. Just a few friends, low-key, and he lit up like a kid promised a prize, said he'd make garlic bread and wear that shirt I liked. He had no idea. When the night came I invited 6 people. His sister, my best friend, 2 of his, and the couple who used to loan him rides when I worked late. Everyone showed up thinking it was something else, until I stood up and played the voicemail from the insurance rep on speaker, then read the thread out loud, then passed around the vitamin bottle. No one moved. Sean's face turned gray, like the lie had finally calcified and was choking him. He started talking fast, saying it wasn't what it looked like, that he just didn't want to scare me away, that he meant to tell me, that the stress made him sick for real. And I didn't say a word, just looked at him the way you look at an animal you used to love, and realized too late it's been biting you this whole time. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I just stood up, grabbed my duffel, and walked out. I moved into a friend's guest room that night and never went back. He texted me for weeks, long paragraphs, audio messages, even a playlist, and I didn't respond to any of it. I blocked his number and his backup account, the one he used for fantasy football, because of course he had one. And now I live in a studio again, different part of town, smaller, but mine, completely mine. I make breakfast with the music loud. I pay my bills and still have money left over. I sleep like I haven't in years. I even laugh sometimes, real, from the stomach laughing, and every once in a while I'll hear someone mention chronic illness, and I'll feel that familiar sting of guilt and fury. But I remind myself, I didn't stop loving because he lied. I stopped because he kept lying when I gave him every reason to be real. I stopped because I mattered too, and I wasn't put on this earth to be anyone's nursemaid to self-pity. He made me believe I was helping him survive, but the truth is, I was the only one trying to live. Subscribe, hit the like button, and explore more fascinating stories.